Hey again everybody, it's Robert184, 2 Hours to Beast from gundam.tk, which is gundamreviews.net, and Gundam Age, the first generation, is coming to an end, or so I figure, with episode 13, so let's get straight to what promises to be a whole bunch of action. And watching the opening theme, I figure this is going to be the last time I come to realize that I'm really going to miss these first generation characters, and then the silhouette of the Zeta Gundam's Wave Rider makes me realize that there's so much more to come. To kick things off, the old man Vargas and DK are hanging out with Flit, and he reminds them that the Age system made a Hyper Mega Whatchama shooter for the Diva to use, and Flit comes across as a bit selfish because he says, hey, that magical weapon-making machine, I thought it could only make weapons for my mobile suit, and here's where Vargas reminds us all of the plan, which is to use the big gun to shoot all the bad guys. But as Flit stands in the hangar and stares up at the Sparrow, which seems to have been forgotten over the last few episodes, he reaffirms his desire to bring an end to this battle. To the space route change room, but no, it's not that way, as Malaise is helping Emily into what has to be the ugliest normal suit in all of Gundam history. And here it's going to be time for the woman's war talk before they get ready to go. Emily's beginning to understand why Flit's doing what he's doing, and Malaise says that if you understand, that's something that you've got to tell him. And as Emily blushes, Malaise reminds us all that she has no boy to tell her true feelings to. There's a hard cut to Largan and Wolf, the potential father of Malaise's future children, and Largan, who's been pining over her for the last few episodes, turns to Wolf and says, "Do you have a girlfriend?" And Wolf says, "I've only got one, it's that shiny white mobile suit of mine." But then he gives the incredibly worrying Kamina line, "Who do you think I am?" Another cut to the bridge where you can see Grudek and the bridge crew getting ready, also in their ugly normal suits, and there's a touching moment as acting ensign Wesley Crusher looks at his locket and says, "I love my mom, I promise I won't die," and then I spent the rest of the episode waiting for him to die. As Grudek puts on his blue face paint and gives a rousing speech appealing to all of his troops' humanity. And what final episode doesn't need a drawn-out launch sequence as we get Largan in the Genoese, Wolf in the GXs, and Flit in the Sparrow, with Emily in the background saying, "Flit, I believe in you." And as the Diva approaches the huge asteroid and it seems like there's no enemy of resistance in front of them, all of a sudden, the massive Unicorn Gundam decloaks, and we get an evil smile across Grodek's face as he calls for the Diva to transform. And as Autobot City begins its transformation sequence, I can't help but think, what is this going to be? Macross style? Is it going to be something like the Arios landing on Unicron and start kicking butt? Even Wolf has to pop his head in and say, "That's cool." And then when it transforms into the White Base or every other Gundam ship we've ever seen, all I could think to myself is, I should have seen that coming, and yet just how awesome it is to see the proper launch base, the wings, and the head of the horse. And somewhere on one of the UE installations somewhere, Dore, the masked man, has a new kid beside him with some psycho-looking eyes, and he says they will be no challenge for us as they just don't have the numbers. As Wolf in his GXs Star Platinums himself through various Gafrans, screaming out for his wolf fangs a la Alial Sarshes. And even Largan is one-shotting Gafrans. As heading into commercial, Flit says this is the day that the battle ends. And don't forget, in addition to checking out advanced grade and high grade beat up and otherwise reviews on my channel, that you can also check out my reviews of master grade full armor Unicorn Gundam and a whole bunch of other master grades and lots more at gundam.tk, which is gundamreviews.net, and it's really easy to find all the categories there. After the break, we see Rakt leading out the combined Elba and Zilla forces, and they seem to have some sort of a magical shield that is keeping them from being like the true cannon fodder that they are, and he's thinking of his old departed frenemy, Don Boyage. As the Diva dips, dodge, ducks, and rolls, Grudek realizes that there's too many MSs between them, and that they're gonna have to get closer to fire their super, hyper, mega whatchamacallit. As Dore reminds his young evil Padawan that good will always lose because Earthlings are stupid. Wolf ends up saving Largan from a Gafran, and then as they're realizing that they're getting completely surrounded by more and more MSs, including the odd Bacto, I had to think that that's an interesting combination. We'll see how these two relationship plays out in the final battle. As Vargas explains to DK and the viewers that there's no way we can possibly fire this weapon until it's absolutely the most critical part of the episode. As Flit decides he's done enough on the sidelines of this episode and gets himself surrounded by flying into a ring of Gafrans, as everybody seems to forget that space is 3D, and as he flashes back to seeing all the times where he was able to predict his enemy moves, he says, "I'll show you what a Metachlorian X-Rounder can do," as he proceeds to cut through guys one after the other, with my absolute favorite one being that he sticks his knee into the face and fires off his needle guns. And as Grudek and the Diva build their big build-up to the big launch, we get cuts to everybody's faces as the tension rises. All the MSs and the pilots say we have to protect the Diva, until finally Grudek gives the order to fire the laser. And as you're sitting back with a massive light show going on all around you with a huge explosion, and you can't help but think that it's not going to work, nothing's gone to plan, and it seems like everything actually worked. And with a massive hole punched in the asteroid, it seems like there's nothing left of either of them, until it's revealed that the ship was able to send off the saucer section, which is on a crash course as it heads to ram the Diva. And just when you might be thinking, who is it that's going to sacrifice themselves to save everybody, it's Racht of all people. Flashing back to Don Voyage, he says, "I want to live the way you did," and as he flies, ready to blow up in the engines of the saucer section and save the day, he is spared by, of all people, I figured it was going to be Mr. Chocolate Bar, to be honest, a big gun and a red shell doll or something with a massive looking thing, and it turns out to be Mr. Madonna, who has gathered up a ragtag band of shell dolls who have come to save the day. And it turns out that in addition to the laser being timely, Flit's speed in the Sparrow was also incredibly useful, as he's able to bring Racht away from the brink, and he stands there hugging him practically and giving him a speech about how important it is to live, and it's what you can do with life. And again, that just made me think of what we're going to see of this guy in the second generation. And all seems good until it's revealed that the high-up muckamucks for the UE, led by Dore, were obviously somewhere else on another mysterious base or ship, as he says to his young Padawan that we have to be careful of these Earth Jinn. Maybe we underestimated them, and then probably my favorite part of the episode is just seeing Dizzle and his evil smirk as he says, "Yes, I cannot wait, I'm tired of waiting," as he looks up at his all-impressive Zetus, which is obviously ready for war, and he calls out and says, "Let's play big brother." But the best part for fans of First Gundam is that there's a girl who, against her will, is going to be joining them in the battle. Let's just call her Lala Tifa Yurin soon. And that's when I realized that this was a great episode, because I had completely lost track of time, and I figured that they were going to have the big battle today, and just as soon as you stop and think about it, you realize how much action was packed into these 20 minutes. But it left me wanting more, and all it's going to do is set things up fantastically for next week, which I can no longer predict. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't going to be the final battle. So overall, I had to say that I thought this was a fantastic episode, and everything you'd come to expect at the end of a series where you've grown an attachment to the characters, the mobile suits, and the situation has got itself off some boring colonies and into where it should be, some interstellar war. A few random thoughts. I thought at one point there was some background music that was completely missing. There was just a scene that needed it, and all of a sudden in my head the 00 background music started playing, and I just said, they don't have this right. Until later when Flit finally let loose with the Sparrow and we get to hear the Ages background music, for which the soundtrack I am very much looking forward to. In the future, one thing that I couldn't help but think about is Racht's role in the second generation, as I mentioned. It's sort of very cool to see this kind of thing in Japanese cartoons and TV, where the young punk is going to end up taking over for the old wise man, so I can just imagine Racht as an old man, providing the same sort of role for the next generation. Other things that just caught my eye, the transformation of the Diva, I don't know why I didn't think of it sooner. It was fantastic. It was a little bit anticlimactic in a way because it hardly changed at all, but by changing into something recognizable to any Gundam fan, or anybody who's watched the old series anyway, I thought they did something fantastic and they didn't go cheesy and robot-like or Macross or anything like that. So that's great to see. In terms of surprise things, I really did expect Mr. Chocolate Bar to appear in this episode. Instead, we got Mr. Madonna in his makeshift army, and I'd love to see what mobile suit he was in. They didn't really give you a good close-up, but that only leads me to suspect that we're going to be seeing a lot more Mr. Chocolate Bar next episode. Now, one thing I really like to see too was the whole relationship between Wolf and Largan, who seem to be involved in a love triangle, whether they know it or not, with Malaise. and we'll see what ends up happening. If you've seen any of the character designs, I think it's pretty obvious, but wouldn't it be interesting to see, and this is total speculation, if Wolf is about to die and it's Largan who saves him instead, or Largan may have done some shenanigans and all of a sudden Largan's going to survive. Anyway, I can't wait to see the dynamic between the two of them. That's something that's going to be set up well. And of course, the most important one is going to be Dezil. What will happen to him in the Zetas, and more importantly, his sister slash Tifa slash Urine slash Lala, and whatever she's going to be in. It looks pink from the teaser. We haven't seen any model kits released of it yet, which is somewhat disappointing because if there is a pink UE suit, that would be a fantastic addition to the black Zetas, the blue Gafran, and the green Bakuto. But something we can wait for, and hopefully every once in a while big bad guy suits get released late in the line, so that high grade they may have been holding off on it in the thoughts that they'll be building up some climax for the actual anime without giving it all away in the toys first. But in the end, that's just me. What did you think of episode 13? I'd love to hear what you thought of the episode, what we're going to be seeing coming up in the future as I show off the battlefield that is this table here when things like these videos are all made. Anyway, what do you think of these videos? Are you enjoying them enough to want to keep tuning in every week? I'll certainly do up to the end of the first generation. After that, we can see what happens. But anyway, everybody, stay tuned for the next week when we will see perhaps the final battle. And I can't wait what to see, and which Age 1 will we see out there in battle? Will Grudek survive? So many questions, very few answers at the moment, and I can't wait to find them out together. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next week. You know, that's really got to be Jotaro for this whole thing to work.